Cool. Okay. Oh dear.
Let's wait for a few more people to join, and then we can get underway with the presentation. Everyone.
Yeah.
Can see people joining at the moment.
Perfect.
Okay, everybody. I think we've just about passed the time for the start of this webinar. So shall we begin?
Yes, let's do.
I am Rachel Atherton from Napthens Solicitors. This is a follow-up really to our last session that we did on bringing your business online, which obviously has become quite topical for businesses following the coronavirus. So our last session was very much focused on the legal side of things. With this one, we're taking a more pragmatic look at the nuts and bolts of how you actually get online, in particular using an e-commerce provider. To do this, we have teamed up with EKM, who are a provider of e-commerce solutions. And I'm just trying to figure out how to get the next slide up.
Should be able to page down maybe.
Yeah, I've pressed page down.
Aye, stuck.
Okay. Wayne, are you there to help me with this at all?
No, I think he's gone.
There we go. Okay.
Well done.
Right. Spot the one who isn't the techie.
But there's a lot of people out there like you, so don't you worry about that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm hoping to ask some questions that hopefully will be relevant to other people as well as we go through. So I'm Rachel Atherton. I'm a senior associate solicitor at Napthens. I deal with all sorts of commercial contracts and data protection issues. As I mentioned, we've teamed up with EKM, who are an online e-commerce platform provider. They specialise in delivering e-commerce solutions to a wide range of businesses. So hopefully it's something that it is available to all different kinds of businesses, even if perhaps it's not something you thought of before the coronavirus. I'll introduce you to Tanya and Ryan from EKM, and also Eve, who will be taking you through the more kind of technical elements of exactly how to get online and what you want to consider. I should mention that Napthens has not branched out into advising on e-commerce solutions. We're still very much a law firm advising on the legal side of things. And of course, there are quite a lot of legal concerns to think about when you're bringing your business online. As Tanya's going to go through the more detailed information about e-commerce, and I'm going to butt in a few times as well, just to ask Tanya some questions, because I know that we all get caught up, don't we, in our own worlds, and I'm definitely not a techie, and I'm definitely interested to understand more about the nuts and bolts of how this works. So hopefully I'll be asking some questions for you. If you do have any questions, you can submit them on the Q&A button there, and we'll try and deal with them as we go through, or perhaps we'll catch up with you after the webinar if that's the most appropriate thing to do. So I will hand over to Tanya, who will talk to you about e-commerce providers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for inviting us to attend today. Really appreciate it. My name's Tanya Schultz, and I work on the business development team, looking after our referrals. And today what we want to, my colleague Ryan. Ryan, would you like to just say hello?
Yeah, hello, hi everyone. How are we doing?
Good, good, good. Ryan has just joined the team, so it's lovely to have him as part of this journey. One of the most important things is why would you move your business online? Okay, and the thing with when you go online, it gives you the ability to reach your customers 24/7 because obviously your shop never shuts. And we're now living in a world where everybody wants things now. So it's really important to be able to expand your business to offer your customers that service. Another thing is boomerang purchases, where people come around and buy. When they're in a shop, they don't tend to. If they don't buy, then will they buy? Whereas having an online offering, they can think about it and obviously come back and buy it later. It also increases brand awareness and credibility, and online retail is incredibly cost effective in comparison to running a bricks and mortar shop. And so you might find your returns are slightly better. Prior to the epidemic, I have a customer that was selling American sweets, and 90% of his business was in the shop. With this epidemic, 90% of his business is now online, and 10% is in his bricks and mortar shop. So, this epidemic has definitely changed the face of e-commerce, and in a lot of cases, they say it's brought it forward 10 years. And in my personal opinion, e-commerce has almost been like the NHS for a lot of small to medium-sized enterprises. When I show you a graph further down, you'll see how there's been a massive spike on people coming online to set up shops. And in a lot of cases, it's been their only lifeline because nobody's been going into the shops, obviously, because of the lockdown. Another thing that you can look at online as an option is its scalability, because obviously you can then reach wider audiences, you can go international, so there's no boundaries or borders when it comes to dealing with to doing business when you've got an online platform. And obviously the future of retail is online. So Rachel, if you can pop down to, sorry, let me just give you a couple of statistics. They say that 70% of mobile searches lead to an action within an hour, and 67% of consumers admit to digital window shopping, of which 77% of those will make a purchase, an impulse purchase, when they're only looking online. So, it does expose you to a lot more opportunity when you're when you've got the online presence. If we can just have a look at that graph, Rachel. So this graph is EKM's sort of like performance since, well, before and after the lockdown. Where you see the blue line suddenly peaking up, that is where we all went into lockdown. You can just see that there's been a massive spike of people recognizing that having an online shop is an alternative solution and is helping their businesses stay afloat. The crisis has meant that millions of people are now buying online instead of going into the shops. Even if the rules are relaxed over the next coming months, the prospect of heading into the local town centre and standing next to somebody who's 2 meters away and risking the chance of you catching something, most people are really only going to head into town now for essentials, and for most of those people are now going to go online and shop online. I mean, for myself, I have a meat order now that comes every week, whereas before I'd go into the butcher and get it. It's now been delivered to my door. It's just a small little thing that's happened in my life, but now that butcher is delivering online. So it's it's the way forward, unfortunately. I mean, when you look at the COVID-19 effect on e-commerce on the next slide, this just gives you an indication on what the post-outbreak shopping behaviors have been for people. And what I find quite interesting is the column on the last column there, where it says visit stores less frequently. I think you're going to find a lot more people will be preferring the option of online, and it's evident that they're already doing so. So I'm not saying,
Tanya, I think it's a really good point that you make about, obviously this has been a big thing during the lockdown because people haven't been able to go to shops haven't been able to be open, but it's a bit like the working from home phenomena, isn't it? We wonder what sort of permanent changes will be made, and I think we can probably all relate to more online shopping when we haven't been able to actually get to the shops, and in some cases you might think that that's actually more convenient going forward.
Absolutely.
Change
and I mean,
behavior.
With a lot of these online shops, you can always do click and collect, for example. So, you can do the purchase online, but you can go into the stop at a time that's convenient for you and collect your items instead of having to stand in the queue and all that kind of stuff. But also, we don't know how long this virus is going to. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Leicester at the moment, they're all now in second lockdown. I mean, for those businesses, what does that mean? Whereas if they set up a shop using a platform like EKM, I mean, the cost to them is only £32 a month, and they've got an outline.
I think I know you're going to come on to this in more detail in a minute, but I think it's true that we're seeing more types of businesses online. I think previously it was the very large businesses, and it was the ones that had been designed to be digital businesses, and now there are a lot more people coming online, and it just makes the consumer choice actually greater, doesn't it, about what you can buy?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a futurist that released some information about how he sees the brick and mortar shop moving forward, and he's saying that that's now going to be more of an acquisition cost as opposed to a necessity, because it's almost going to be like an element of marketing. People will see that you're there, but they'll probably go online when they get home and they've done what they've done with the kids or whatever they need to do, and in the comfort of their own home they can make those buying decisions. But it really is going to spin round, I can see, just surely on the increase of people going online. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting times. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, really. It's very difficult to predict, but with business, I think now e-commerce is going to be an additional element. It's going to be a must-have. I mean, you need a bank account, you need a credit card, you need this, that, and the other. You need an online shop if you've got a business or service. Everybody goes online now, and I mean, when you know that 70% of people actually make purchases online, that just says it's a big chunk of you're missing out on a big opportunity if you don't have that available for people to tap into. But if we go on to the next slide, I mean, what's important for you if you when you're looking at an e-commerce platform? I mean, there's a couple of points there that stand out, and it's obviously looking at the vendor's experience and expertise. I mean, take the time to research case studies, customer reviews, and things like that about the platform. I mean, maybe take advantage of any of the free trial periods that they offer, but also look at what kind of support you're going to get, because a website is not an oil painting. You don't paint it and just put it on the wall. You need to constantly evolve it, and in some cases, you might be confident enough to manage it yourself, but there might be stuff there that you can't do. Do they have the support available to you? Because if they don't, how are you going to get by? Am
I right in thinking as well, Tanya, that something like e-commerce, and I mean, I'm imagining in my mind, what does it involve? Well, it involves payment solution, it involves technology to market, it involves all sorts of different technologies. Is it the kind of thing that moves quite quickly?
Yes, it's ever evolving, and it will continue to evolve. I mean, there's apps are being developed. There's voice, artificial intelligence. I mean, it's evolving so quickly that for people to keep up with it, it's a job in itself.
Yeah.
And of course, any business looks at scalability, because any business wants to grow. And I mean, you've got to be able to take that business from maybe turning over £50,000 a year to £1 million a year. And when that happens, there's a lot of additional bits that you need to do in order to get to that. You need PPC marketing, for example, maybe email marketing. I mean, for a lot of people, they employ somebody just to do that. So when you go to a platform like e-commerce that offers all of the solutions, it just makes your job running your business easier, because you've got experts out there that are going, hey, by the way, did you know this, that, and the other? Or maybe you do this, you do that, and things, and they're constantly feeding you with the kind of support, business idea support that you need when you venturing off into it's going to be a new world for a lot of people.
I think that's a good point, because I think this is why previously you see very large companies doing these things, but they've got obviously departments of people to look after that. I suppose one of the things about having someone else do it for you is that you effectively outsource that responsibility and rely on the knowledge of somebody
whose
job
doing
it is without employing them.
Exactly, because I mean, you're an expert in your business, but how long has it taken you to be an expert in your business? I mean, you can't just by well, doing it on your own is going to take you a while to get there. Whereas when you've got companies like EKM, you know, you fast track. You're straight in there. You've got it's all there ready, waiting for you. I mean, we've got templates. You know, in some cases, we've actually had businesses up and running in 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's not something that can, you know, depending obviously on what you want and what you want out of the website. I mean, if you just want to get up and running and you're quite happy just to use the templates that are there for the meantime, then you can do that. You can make yourself available very, very quickly, and you can start earning money. Whereas, you know, if you want to get technical, then it can take a little while. But at the end of the day, if you've got a website functioning and it's earning you money, I mean, that's the whole goal, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, so always look at scalability. Can you upscale? But what I think is the most important thing about being part of a platform that can service you is the SEO friendliness of it. E-commerce platforms that come with a comprehensive SEO feature will enable your online shops to rank highly in the search engines. So
I'm
you're
just
tapping
going to
into
butt
that.
in here. I'm just going to butt in here for the
Yeah.
benefit of, in case anyone listening is it doesn't know what that acronym means,
Yes.
because I know that it means search engine optimization. So this is where your results, your website will easily be found by a search provider and come up on one of the top results of Google rather than page number, 5 or whatever.
Exactly. And that's really important because, you know, when somebody comes to a website, you know, if we're now a society that needs everything done immediately, you know, and if you're not going to go looking down the bottom of the list, you know, you're going to come to the first thing that's quick and efficient. And that's why your SEO friendliness is really important. But what's also important is making it mobile friendly, because they say that, like, you know, 70% of business is done on a mobile phone now. You know, so people are making purchases on a mobile phone. They're not waiting to go home and log on to the laptop or whatever. They're actually on the bus or wherever they are making that purchase there and then. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so if your website is not friendly, mobile friendly or mobile responsive, as they say, then you're cutting yourself out of a big chunk of potential, you know.
Yeah.
And then finally, I mean, the most important thing obviously is security. Make sure that the e-commerce provider has the necessary security protocols in place. And you're looking at, like, you know, inflatable protection online, data transfer, security for money transfers, you know, the big brother of SEL certificates. So making sure that you know, that you're logging into a secure website. And that's what an SSL is really. What it tells the shopper that this is not a dodgy site in a sense. So, you know, those are the key points when you're looking for an e-commerce platform that you need to explore, and just make sure it ticks all of your boxes. And we do have a little checklist further down in the presentation that people can use just to keep themselves on track, and try and help them make the right decisions for them, you know. So if we can pop to the next slide there. Okay, so I also want to kind of just mention to everybody the 5 common mistakes to avoid when they're choosing an e-commerce platform. Now, the reason why I say this is because, you know, a lot of people will look at the initial price tag, but actually when you actually start working with the platform, you know, you might have to pay for certain features. You might have a chunk of your commission being charged on your gateways and things like that. So when you initially sign up, it's maybe £15 a month, but before you know it, you're paying £75 a month. And is that actually, you know, whereas some platforms, it's just one price and you get all of the features added in, and you're free to use it. So you can actually budget, and you know that that's all you're going to be spending on a monthly basis, you know.
So you need to have a review of what all the
Yeah,
costs are, because
yeah,
is that what you're saying? So
yeah,
rather than just the upfront costs, think about where's your business going to be in 6 months
exactly,
or a year,
exactly.
and are there any additional costs, and just really budget for them when you're
Yeah,
making that decision.
yeah, because it's not always, you know, the cheapest is not always the best solution for you, and paying maybe a little bit more means that you can actually you can scale up, you can do all the other bits and pieces that your business wants to do in maybe 2, 3, 5 years time, whatever it might be, because you don't want to be hopping around and, you know, changing mobile contracts, if that makes sense. You know, you want, it becomes a business, it becomes you know, that becomes your face on this ethos of the abyss of the internet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another thing to look for is obviously, people don't define their target audience. So understanding who you're going to be selling to. And that becomes quite important when you're looking at PPC kind of marketing, which is paid per click advertising, because understanding your audience means that you can put the products in front of the right people that are going to buy, but also, like I said previously, is not choosing a platform that can't upscale. So in other words, you might want to go into maybe drop shipping, or you might want to, can the platform accommodate any future evolution for your website, if that makes sense, and the plans that you might be wanting to do. But for a lot of people, and this is a big issue, is the locking and the input and output speeds of a website. And I'm sure if you're like me, if the website doesn't load or whatever, you'll move away from it and go somewhere else. So you always want to make sure that the platform is operating at top capacity. I think ours is 99.99%. So it just means that obviously it's operating to 0.0. Well, that's a good operating speed anyway. I mean, it doesn't let you down basically. And then also trying to do it on your own. I mean, I'd like to know anybody who's been able to get in the car and drive it without anybody telling them how to use the car, and that's how I see it. You can get a book and go and learn how to drive the car, but then you've got to drive the car and you'll probably crash it, and that's fine if that's the kind of person that if that suits you, then that's brilliant. But e-commerce has been brought forward 10 years, we say, because of this epidemic. And so it's moving very fast. And if you don't jump on now and get into the system, then you're missing so many opportunities. And doing it on your own could only just hinder you, because there's a lot to learn. And I mean, we've done that. We've learned, we've made our mistakes, and we're now able to say, this is how to do it efficiently, Yeah, so
Could I just ask you to explain a bit more about this target audience? Because I think we all know what this means when we're, if you get TV ads or newspaper or magazine ads, you figure out, don't you, the demographic of the people that you want to target with your products, and you do adverts. How does this kind of work when you're doing it online?
Well, it would be down to any kind of marketing side of things, because it's a science in itself, when you market on Google, and making sure that, somebody, say for example, might be looking for a candle, but what kind of candle is it? Wax, so you've got to be able to.
Oh, sorry, Tanya.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go for it, Eve.
I was going to say as well, when you're looking at your target audience, when you first start out, if you've never sold online before, you're probably not going to have a big budget to play with in terms of advertising. So what you have to do is look at what social media you're planning to use with your products online. For example, if you're a crafting shop, you're going to know, as a crafter yourself, you probably spend a lot of time on Pinterest, and that's probably the best place to find your customers. So you can start ever so gently popping your products onto Pinterest, seeing how they're received. If you're a clothes shop, you're probably going to get most of your target audience from Instagram. So what you do is you start popping content onto Instagram, see how well it's received. It's free to do an Instagram business account, and you get insights with each post that tells you how many people looked at the post, how many people commented, and so on. If it's more of a family product, or sometimes quite DIY stuff, weirdly does quite well on Facebook. So again, you'd try that social platform and you pop some of your products onto there. Again, all free to set up, but from those insights, that can tell you then that when you've got some money together to spend on paid advertising, you can say, well, this is my demographic. Here's the age and the gender and the location of my people, and really tailor that first advertising campaign. So you're not wasting any money just casting your net really wide. You're keeping it nice and niche to get the most out of your advertising budget, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
And you can measure the effectiveness of that, presumably, by the
Yeah, there's lots of free things that you can set up. We spend a lot of time, because obviously not every business has a big budget to begin with. So at EKM, we spend a lot of time looking at e-commerce news, new websites coming out, new platforms, and there's plenty that you can set up for free. Won't cost you a penny. You just got to know where they are and how to do it, like Google Analytics, for example. That's free to add to your online shop, whichever platform you're with, and you can use a funnel system in there, so you can see where where people drop off from your checkout flow. So from there you can work out, oh, what needs changing? Why did they not complete that purchase? And then use that data, like I say, later on in advertising.
Yeah, see, it's a science in itself.
It is. And we're nerds, to be fair.
Yeah, we're geeks, I call them, eh?
Is it the next slide, Tanya?
Yes, please. Yeah. So the next slide. This is where we've obviously given you guys a bit of a checklist just to kind of question yourself. Have you gone through, have you chosen your name for your business and so on and so forth? It looks pretty obvious, but, you'll be surprised at how people might forget about it when they're actually starting to look at the, look at the options and what they need to do. So I believe that this is going to be available for everybody. After the presentation, so we can send that out. But also what I've done is we've also done some like questions to ask the provider, which is just to kind of help you prompt and understand and decide, is this provider going to be right for you? One of the
I'd just like to just chip in a legal point there, actually, on the name. One of the things that you can think about, if you've got a small shop and now you're thinking about going online, you might want to have a think about a trademark as well, and protecting that brand, because it's likely to get more exposure.
That's it.
So it's probably something to think about as well with the name.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is it. You kind of don't always think about that. You kind of innocently go, oh, I'm going to do this, and then suddenly somebody comes along and before you know it, your business has been, what would have been a good business is no longer, because somebody's got the idea or is kind of whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're absolutely right about the trade stuff. I mean, I would say security is probably a good thing to look at a lot of as well. Making sure, because cyber attacks is big news at the moment, and you want to know what protocols are in place in case of breach or attack and things like that. I think on that particular slide, those are the two. That's one of the things that jumps out at me. And another thing that I think is integrations. And this is when we're talking about scalability. Is that right now you might be fine. What the website offers initially is great. But what if you then want to integrate with maybe your own delivery company, or you might want to do maybe drop shipping, and can the platform accommodate that further down the line, because you don't want to be moving your house all over the shop.
Is this about using APIs to integrate with what you've got set up already, if you do have something set up as well?
Yeah. I mean, that if you've got something that isn't already with it on the platform, can it work with the API? Because it can be very costly if it doesn't.
So this is where you, for example, got an eBay account already, but you want to integrate it with that.
Well, we've got an eBay import and export tool within our features. So but something like, for example, you might have, I've got a photographer that uses a particular printing shop because of the quality and what this guy does and how he delivers it and so on and so forth. Although we do offer something similar, he doesn't want to use that. He wants to use this particular print shop for his images. Now, obviously, if we can't get that to integrate, then if it's that important to him, then he'll need to kind of pay for the integration, and that can turn out to be tens of thousands of pounds. And you've spent all this time and energy on this website, on this platform, yet the scalability further down the line can't address it. So what'll happen is then you'll have to move that away, and it's like supposedly when you look at a mobile phone, each mobile phone has its own kind of looking interface, so you might be on this platform, and when you bring it over to another platform, it has a slight change because they can't do the same things, and then you're reinventing something. And I don't know, I think a lot of businesses would rather just know that this is where it is, and they can then grow.
There's also sorry, I'm butting in again.
Go for it.
So one of the things on our customer support team that we hear quite often from people that are setting up for the first time is this saying, right, I've used the eBay tool to import all my things over from eBay, but what I want to know is, if I sell something on eBay, will it automatically get sold on my shop? And that's like a multi-stock integration tool you need for that. There are platforms that do it, that plug into EKM and eBay. And for a lot of first timers, they're not aware how to use third-party integrations or if any of them exist at all. But there's absolutely loads that work with EKM and work with lots of other platforms as well for like your email marketing, your multi-inventory source type stuff. So if you sell something on Etsy, it'll knock the stock off from what you're selling on Amazon, on your EKM shop and on your eBay and so on. It's something that, like, I wouldn't say it's relatively new, but it's something that new shop owners don't know a lot about. So we spend time going, right, what is it you need? You need to use this app here and that'll work for you, my love.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is exactly why, if you're looking at going online, something like EKM, you know, that is exactly why you would go to a provider, because they have done all of this. They know what they're doing. It's an industry in itself, and you know, just pay the experts, you know, because it just makes your life a lot easier, and you don't have costly mistakes, you know.
I just want to, before we go on to the next slide, I know we're not going to go through every single one of these points in detail because it's obviously quite a lot of information, but that point about security as well, I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the legal side of things quite briefly at the end of this talk, but I think that's quite important as well from a legal point of view, because if you're operating a website, you are dealing with people's personal information. So for data protection purposes, you know, it's going to be important to have appropriate security, and obviously doing things like taking payment as well, and potentially email marketing. So keeping that information safe and making sure that, you know, it doesn't get into the wrong hands is probably quite key from a legal point of view as well as a practical one.
Yep, very important. I mean, I've been hacked so many times on my mobile phone. It just, you know, it just drives me nuts. I mean, I'm getting people setting up direct debits and all sorts. But anyway. So that's obviously, you know, we, like you say, we're gonna obviously let this be available for everybody. I mean, social media is probably another thing to kind of check out, because obviously there's a lot of business that is done on social media, and you know, does the platform integrate with, you know, like my colleague Eve was saying, Facebook, Amazon, eBay, and so on and so forth. Because I think with if you don't have an e-commerce platform right now, then you would probably, you know, you're new to it, aren't you? So you know, otherwise you would have an e-commerce offering, and a lot of people start out on Facebook. A lot of people start out on Amazon and eBay, and then a website is the next stage in evolution. You know, so yeah.
So you need a way of tying it together.
Absolutely, makes it easier for yourselves. You know. Okay. And I think the next slide is for you there, Rachel.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, so I'm not going to spend too long talking about the detailed legal aspects of selling online, because our previous webinar that we did focused quite intensely on that. So I'm just going to do a little bit of an overview. I think it's been really interesting, thanks Tanya, just to understand how it all works, actually the nuts and bolts of it, because I do think that sort of understanding helps us to inform what we're doing, certainly from my point of view. The checklist, if you want a checklist for what you need legally, this is the checklist that I would use when I'm advising clients about setting up online. It's obviously very different to actually getting yourself online, but these are the legal things to consider. You're going to need a privacy notice. So again, this is to comply with data protection law. This is a legal requirement. This is it's going to tell people what personal data you're collecting from them, what you're doing with it and why, and it's going to inform them about their rights. There's the GDPR, which is obviously it's about 2 years old now, piece of legislation on data protection. This really changed the landscape for data protection law, and it's very prescriptive about what you have to put in this privacy notice. So it's not a big job for someone like me, but it does need to be right. And it is important to stress as well that it's going to be different depending on what type of business you've got and depending on what you're doing with the personal data. So especially all that good stuff over marketing on targeting, you're going to need to think about exactly what you're going to be doing with that, and reflect that in your privacy notice in order to comply with the law. You know, so it's the kind of thing which you're going to do it at the beginning to get launched, and then you're also going to you're going to keep it under review. So that's the list there: privacy notice, cookie notice, a consent box. I'm sure everyone is way too familiar with those. We say yes, accept, or decline with cookies. Email marketing as well. I'm going to talk about website T's and C's. I'm going to talk about the sales process. There's some quite specific requirements on this if you're selling to consumers, and also terms and conditions of sale. So that's the contract between you and your customers who buy from you. Okay, so just to focus on the first three of those, I've already really talked about the privacy notice. All of these things, though, the privacy notice, cookie work, and the email marketing, they all come under the banner of data protection law. So the privacy notice is obviously going to tell people what you're doing with their data. The law on cookies is that you must not place, if you're the website operator, you must not place a cookie on somebody's device until they've agreed. And in order to obtain their agreement, you need to obviously get them to click, but it also has to be informed consent. You can't just, that's why you need a cookie notice, which sets out what cookies you're using and why. And the way these are usually presented is you normally get the box which says, it should say yes or no, and it should have a link for more information, so that those people who really want to understand exactly what's going on are able to click through and have a look. Otherwise, if people don't know what they're agreeing to, then it wouldn't meet the requirements. So it's important, whatever e-commerce platform you're using, or if you decide that you can do it yourself, it's important to make sure that you do use that functionality. Most people who build websites will be able to help you with that. But you know, and a lot of them will also provide a kind of generic policy, but just be mindful that really when it comes to the data protection law, generic isn't where it's at. It has to be specific. So normally when I advise clients on this, I ask them to tell me, they need to tell me exactly what cookies they're using on their website and why. So they need to do an audit of those cookies first, figure out what they're using them for, and after we've got that, it's a very quick job then just to do a cookie notice. So that's something which doesn't take long. Your people designing or helping you with your website will be able to give you the information, and once you've got that, you're kind of good to go. Again, it does need to be kept up to date, because if next week you add some more cookies, some more tracking or advertising marketing cookies, you're going to need to add them and keep it up to date. So you don't want to just think about having a process for how they get added, and making sure whoever's in charge of that is mindful of having to keep up to date with those legal requirements. The last bullet on this slide has to do with email marketing. Now, if you're a business that's never been online before, you've got a shop, you probably don't have a list of your customers' email addresses. You might do, but I would say that's probably fairly unlikely. One of the opportunities with going online is that you can start to build a database of all your customers, and you know that those people, if they come through your website and you collect their details, then you know that they're interested in what it is that you're selling. So potentially quite a good way to get in touch with people who would be interested in spending money with your business. But you do have to make sure that you comply with the law. The law is actually quite strict on this. Again, it comes under data protection law. So you're going to need to make sure that you give people the right information and collect the right consent from them when they come to your website. So quite often this will be during the purchase journey. At the end of the purchase journey, quite often you'll get to the end and it'll say, click here to agree to our terms and conditions, and click here if you'd like to receive emails from us about products you might be interested in. There's a few different ways of doing it. If you're marketing to consumers, you've got a couple of options. Most people, I think, are tending just to go for opt-in consent now, so tick the box if you want to hear from us. But there are a few options with that, and that way you can start to build your database up and make sure that you're making the most of that information. You do have to make sure, though, when you use the actual information to email them, that they are given the chance to opt out. in the email, and you'll be familiar with this. Everyone, I think I certainly remember getting more marketing emails than I ever had before the GDPR came in, as people were trying to update all their databases with consent because they knew that the rules were changing. And you would always see in those emails a link saying, if you would like to unsubscribe, please click here. And it's really important to have that. It's a legal requirement. So it's easily done, easily complied with, but best to just set it up and get it right from the beginning. What you don't want to do is end up with a database, a list of loads of emails of people who you know that are interested in your products and not actually having the legal basis to email them in the end. So that's something to think about ahead of time. And it is one of those areas that companies do get fined for if they get it wrong by the ICO. You do see quite a lot. I mean, it does tend to be where people have really gone to town and emailed, a large amount of people who perhaps they didn't have the legal right to email or text, actually, of course, because that's the same rules apply to that. So your website terms and conditions, the sale process, and terms and conditions of sale. Well, website terms and conditions. These you quite often see these on websites saying what the terms of use are, and it just tells people what the rules are. So it just makes it clear that any content on there belongs to you, and that people can't just go and use it for their own purposes. And things like if you're providing a link to other websites, it just makes it clear where your responsibility ends. For example, our website may contain links to other websites, and if you go there, make sure that you check out whatever their privacy notice says, something like that. And it can also limit your liability, and just make it clear that if there's any disputes, what law applies and that sort of thing. If you're selling to consumers as well, you're going to have to think about your sales process. Now, this again is something to think about along with all this stuff actually, but this one in particular, when you're setting up your website, whether it's with a e-commerce provider or somebody else, whether you're doing it yourself, you need to think about how that process works, because if you're selling to consumers, you are obliged to provide certain information up front as part of that process. You need to make it clear what you're actually selling. It all sounds very obvious, but it is actually a legal requirement. You need to be very clear on the price. If anything's extra, any sort of delivery fee, that needs to be made very clear. And you need to offer customer telephone helplines, for example, have to be offered at the basic rate. And various other bits and pieces of information that consumers are entitled to up front. So it's important to think about that ahead of time, because you don't want to get to the end of the process and then realise that actually you haven't complied and have to go redesign the whole process. I mean, hopefully, if you're using an e-commerce provider, all this is going to be built into their process anyway.
But I mean, the important thing is to tell you they've got to look out for these kind of things, and I mean, it's the obvious things that people tend to forget.
Yeah, it is, and it's not the kind of thing it's easy to comply. It just needs a little bit of planning and thought. It's not really hard to comply with, but it's worth thinking of it.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be thinking of it on the day before you go live. You want to have it all nice and sorted out for when you need it. And the other key document, of course, is your terms and conditions of sale. So these are going to govern your contract with your customer. And you need to think with this, who are you actually selling to? I mean, I'm assuming that most if you're a shop going online, then obviously your customers will be consumers, and consumers have a lot of rights already. The law is very different if you're selling to consumers or if you're selling to businesses. So you need to figure that out. And the thing to remember with this as well is if you don't have a contract, if you don't have a written contract between you and your customer, it doesn't mean you don't actually have a contract. It just means no one's written it down, which means no one really knows what it says.
Yeah.
And we get, we quite often have people come to us and say, oh, we need some terms and conditions doing. And the reason that they'll be doing it is because perhaps they've been trading for a while and they've not had any issues. But then once they get an issue, it becomes very difficult to sort out if you can't look at an agreement and say, yes, this is what we agreed. So it's worth thinking about this ahead of time. Who are my customers? What kind of promise am I going to make on quality? Now, if they're a consumer, they're already entitled to promises on quality, and whatever your terms and conditions say, you can't exclude that. They've got that right. So there are certain things that you can say, we don't make any warranties or promises, but it doesn't really make any difference. If you're a consumer, you'll still be on the hook for the quality that they're entitled to at law.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing about trading online, if your customers are consumers, is that very different to selling in a shop, is that they have the right to cancel. Now, there are some exclusions to this, but if you're selling something like clothes or TVs or furniture, whatever it is, more than likely your customers have got the right to change their mind just because they feel like it. Now, if those goods have already been dispatched, then they will be able to return them to you. You don't have to pay for the delivery cost back, but you do have to make sure that people are given some information up front about that right and about what happens. And obviously you need to set yourself up for it as well. You don't want to be, the first time you think about this, you don't want it to be when somebody says, oh, I've changed my mind, and then you think, what do you mean you've changed your mind? You need to have a process in place yourself for how you're going to deal with that. Again, not something difficult to comply with. It's just something which you want to sort out ahead of time. So if I imagine a shop which has now gone online, perhaps you've got someone now in there whose job it is to deal with looking after returns and customer queries from the online part of the business. You might, there are some exclusions to this. For example, if you're providing made-to-measure goods, then they don't have the right to change their mind, because obviously you can't, once you've made a dress to fit someone specifically, you can't really sell it to anybody else. So there are some exclusions, but you need to consider whether any of those apply to your business. And even if people don't have the right to change their mind, you might take the view that actually we're going to give them a bit of a right anyway, contractually, because we think it's better for business when people can make those sort of purchases and know that they've got the comfort of just sending stuff back if they don't want it. I know that probably a lot of people order for choice, don't they, on that sort of basis, and that'll feed into whether or not you want them to pay for returns or whether you're prepared to do it, given that you think it might be good for sales. One of the other things as well important to consider with this is to you'll be able to have some attempt at limiting your liability. Now, the rules on this are very different depending on whether or not you're selling to consumers, in which case it's quite hard to limit liability, but you can do something on it. It's better than nothing. If you're selling to business customers, then you can limit your liability in a more effectively. If you don't have a clause in your contract, or if you've got an unwritten contract, then your liability is unlimited. So, for example, you might have somebody who's buying your goods to sell on, or something like that. Perhaps they're actually a business. If you deliver later than you said you would, and they then suffer a loss, perhaps they come after you and say, well, because you didn't deliver on time, I've suffered this loss. Now, ordinarily, you would, if I was preparing terms for a website terms, I would make sure that people couldn't claim that sort of more remote loss from you, and there'll be a whole other list of exclusions, again depending on who it is that you're selling to. But it's just worth saying that if you don't have these things in place to protect you, then your liability is potentially unlimited. So it's just worth thinking about these things up front. I mean, one of the things to say with all these legal elements is, get us lawyers involved at the beginning. Don't wait for it to be a last minute job at the end, because it puts us in a position of we'd much rather be able to add some value early on in the process, and actually influence things. If at the last minute it transpires that you've not complied with one of the information requirements or something like that, then it's much harder to sort it out at the end than if you get us involved more in the planning stage. And then you can get on, if you've got us instructed to do some legal documents for you, you can have all that easily nice and under control, ready to go by the time you launch, and you can give yourself some more time then to focus on the nuts and bolts of exactly how it's all going to work. How you're going to get all your photos uploaded of your products, and how you're going to target people, and all those great things that bringing your business online, those sort of opportunities that you can make the most of. So that's, I mean, I think that's probably the main issues to consider legally, and get us involved early. So that that brings us to the end. You've got my contact details there. If anyone wants to get in touch, if anyone wants any details from EKM, I don't think we've got them on this presentation, have we, Tanya?
No, we haven't. No, but we can always put those on.
I'm very happy to pass anyone's details on. If anyone would like more information, or just feel free to contact me about any of the issues that have come up. I'm looking at that picture now and thinking I really do need to go for a haircut, because it's much longer now with I've got my lockdown haircut right now.
Oh, you need some clippers and do number 1. Excellent, well done. That was really good.
If anyone has any questions, they can submit them through the Q&A, or you can contact me after the webinar. Again, whether it's a question for me or whether it's a question for someone from EKM. And I hope if you are thinking about going online, then I hope it goes really well.
Yes, good luck. And we're here if you need any help.
Mm-hmm. I can't see that we've got any questions. So, Tanya, unless you've got anything to add, I think that brings us to an end.
I think we've done a very good job. I hope everybody's found it useful.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on. We've got a question come up.
Is part of the service separation EKM? Well, I mean, it can be. I mean, obviously, if we, I mean, depending, we've certainly got some templates, generic templates to prompt our owners to look at it. But obviously, like Rachel says, you want to do it specific for your business, so that there's, you know, you would want to get Rachel looking at what we've got set up to make sure that it's appropriate for yourselves.
Yeah, I think some templates can be really helpful to focus your attention. But the problem is with that is that no one size fits all. So you probably have a look at them, and then you can be really well briefed to tell someone like me what you need to put in there to cover yourself. All businesses are different, and faced with different risks and different things that they're doing. So thanks for that question, Neil.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, and if anyone does have any questions, please do feel free to get in touch afterwards. Thanks everyone for attending. I hope it was useful. If anyone has any suggestions or any requests of webinars that they would like to see, or any information that they think would be useful to follow up on this, please do get in touch and let us know.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.